All right, so as Nathan mentioned, I'm going to talk about how we use an evaluation method called PURE here at Wyden. And so I'm glad that I got to go after Sophie, who just had this like kind of think about the future, man, free your mind sort of moment, because I'm about to get real tactical. So while she's inspired us for what we might do in decades in the future, you can do this tomorrow if you want to, or later this evening. So yes, like Nathan said, I work here at Wyden, so I also wanted to take a moment and welcome all of you. Thank you for coming here and visiting us at our office this afternoon. It's awesome to have so many UXy people in the same place, and it's great to be the host for the first time we're doing this here in Madison. I'm the Director of Research and Design here, so the user experience and service design teams work with me, and I've been here for about 3 years. I also have a master's in library and information studies from the iSchool here in Madison, so I'm excited to see some familiar faces and another one coming after me. Just be a part of this big community together. So what I'm going to go over is give you just a little bit of context at Wyden, not because it's like a sales pitch or something, but because it's important to understand what it is that we make and how it has come to be over the last several years in order to kind of understand why we're using this particular method called PURE. I'll give a quick overview of what PURE is and where and how we learned about it, and then some examples of how we are using it. All right, so Wyden, what's our deal? We make digital asset management software. So it's DAM is the acronym that you'll hear people talk a lot about, a wealth of good comedy and jokes associated with that. It's a cloud-based system that over 600 companies across industries all around the world use. You can see a couple brands that you might recognize that are our current customers up on the slide here. And the solutions that we make are used by marketing and creative teams to help them manage their collateral and content throughout what we refer to as the content lifecycle. So if you think about making a thing that's going to be used in a marketing campaign at some point in time, it has to be planned, it has to be created. Then once it exists, it's managed somehow, it's published out to different channels. And then you maybe want to do some analytics on how the thing is performing once it's out there in the wild. So Wyden Collective helps you do all of those things at the various points throughout your process. We're based here in Madison, and we like to joke that we're one of the oldest software companies in the world. We started in 1948. In 1948, we were a print engraving company, and so then have evolved over the years into digital publishing and now creating software for people that create digital content. Like I said, we're based in Madison, but we also we're super excited to open our first international office in London just a couple years ago. And one of the members of our UX team works over in London, so we get to go and visit him, and that doesn't suck. So a little bit more about the Wyden Collective, the thing that we make and offer to our customers. It is a suite of applications. We have workflow that helps you manage the review, request, approval process for creative content. Assets is really the heart of the application. That's where teams can store, describe, manage access, usage rights, all the administrative stuff that lives in the assets application. Portals is sort of similar to a microsite builder type of concept where you can take a selected group of stuff that lives in your DAM in the assets application, curate it for a specific audience, and then share it out in a branded site so that they can access just what they need, not your whole wealth of information that might be in the assets application. Templates is a tool that lets creative teams give some freedom to their colleagues that are not in creative roles. So you can make, like say, for example, a PDF that's talking about a campaign that might be coming up, but the creative team can control what typeface, what font, what color, what sort of images can be put into it. So it creates a little world for non-creative people to make their collateral in. And then there's finally the insights application. And so that's the piece that tells you how all of the content within the suite is performing, who's accessing it, where is it embedded, how well is the stuff that you've spent time and energy creating performing out in the world. And so again, this quick description is not important so that you know like the details of what is digital asset management. It's important so you know that we've been building this software since the late 90s. And so some of the coding here has maybe not been touched since 2002. And some of it was touched literally yesterday. And so we've got a whole bunch of different things that we're putting together and offering out to customers as an integrated suite. But the fact that we have been building it for so long, over so much time, and we have really never done like a full redesign of the entire suite, you can imagine presents some navigation challenges. And so since navigation is a huge part of what is fundamental to information architecture, our attempts to make our navigation better was what I wanted to focus on talking about with you guys today. All right, so we're not here to be sad that we have challenges. We're here to focus on how to tackle them, and that is where the peer evaluation has come into play at Widen. So the acronym PURE is Pragmatic Usability Rating by Experts. This was an approach that the UX research team and I learned about at 2 different conferences within about 6 months of each other last year. So we decided that was the universe speaking to us and telling us, like, you need to try this. We keep putting it in front of you. And so we decided to start using it as an evaluation tool on our work in progress. The method is really focused on ease of use, not all of the other aspects of UX like interaction design or visual design. It's about flow and usability. So the experts that you see referenced at the end of the acronym here are both subject matter experts in the product itself, as well as usability experts, members of the UX team that really understand what good usability means to us here at Widen and in the world at large. So I know that this is a departure from the usual UX mantra of you are not your user. Like, that is why we go out and do tests with our customers or with proxies for our customers. But as a B2B application with a very specific target audience, it's hard to always be able to do our testing with them. So we try to save the sorts of interactions and research touch points that we do with our customers for things that are kind of higher risk assumptions or questions, things that are more about what should we make rather than how should we make it. So we let ourselves be the experts in some of these peer assessments because it is just one of many research methods that we include in our work around here. So how does a pure work session go? The UX research team designs a study. So they will decide which of our personas are we going to put on while we go through and do this evaluation. We have a couple main personas that we think about for the whole Widen collective, and then we have a few more specific ones depending on which one of those applications you're working within. So the research team decides which persona this is for, and then what is the key task that we're going to evaluate. Then the research team also creates a scorecard. We'll talk more about that in a couple slides that the evaluators use. And the evaluators are a cross-functional group of people that include representatives from the engineering team, from the product management team, the UX designer that works on the part of the collective that we are looking at in one of these evaluations. And then we usually bring in a couple additional UX team members just to really make sure we're stacking the deck in terms of people who understand usability. Again, both like our design guiding principles here at Widen and in the world of UX at large. So this mix gives us a good, well-rounded point of view. No one voice is louder than the other. When we create the scores at the end, it's kind of a group discussion that bubbles up to how do all of us feel this thing is performing. So once we've got this group gathered together, the UX researcher that is leading the evaluation assumes the persona and walks through the tasks while everybody else watches and takes notes. So the scoring is done individually by each person who's participating in the evaluation. And then there's a group conversation, like I said, about how everybody scored the steps and what we think the ultimate rating is going to be. We try not to get too deep into solution mode in these sessions, but if an idea pops into your head about, oh, like that's low-hanging fruit, we could knock that out tomorrow. That's the great thing about having engineers in the room is they see these things and they start to get the ideas. We definitely take notes of them, but the point of the session is not to come up with solutions and how specifically we're going to fix the issues that we're identifying. A little more detail on how we do the scoring that I've talked about a couple of times here. So it's a 3-point scale. Each task has many steps and each step gets a score. So a 1 means like, yep, no problem. This can be accomplished easily by the target user. They don't have to think too hard. They're probably not going to nope out in the middle of it. Move on. This is easy. If you give it a 2, there's a notable degree of difficulty or a lot of cognitive load that goes into the user completing that task, but we feel confident that with a bit of effort, they're going to be able to do it. And again, this is all with the persona that we have taken on in mind, not with how I, Leah, who kind of know how the thing works. Can I do it? Doesn't matter. 3 is when things get a little hairy. That's when we legitimately think like this is a place where somebody might just stop. If some of the things that you need to do in our application are maybe find access to the flyer that was created by your colleagues 3 months ago, you're just gonna walk over and ask your colleague. You're not gonna try and figure it out within the app for things that we're giving a 3 to. So this is an example of what a scorecard might look like. This one is not from Widen, this was from the Googles. So there's a couple things to point out. There's the date at the top. So this was the baseline. This was the first time that this scorecard was created. There's the red number, the 77 at the top. That is the cumulative score given to the application that has several tasks within it. So each of the rows, download, install, I'm not wearing my glasses, I don't know what those say, add first entry. Each row is a task. And then each of those bars is the representation of the steps. So then each task, again, has a cumulative score of what all of the steps added up to. Then when you do this again over time, like say you've decided you're gonna prioritize install companion SW. And you're gonna really work on that because boy, that one looks ugly. It's all yellow and red. And then you go back and do this exact same evaluation again. You put on the same persona, you walk through the same tasks, and you start to see how your work is making an impact in the usability of stuff. So if we think about this example, oh look, yikes, it started out with 3 yellows and 4 reds. And then after 1 quarter's worth of work, they've brought the yellows down to greens and the reds down to yellows. So the score went from an 18 to a 10, which impacts the overall score for the app, contributed to bringing that down to a 53. You can also see through this example that there are 2 ways that you might bring your score down. You might bring the numbers of each step, those green, yellow, and red guys, make them a better color, or you might reduce the total number of steps. Like, I think initial enrollment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. In the first evaluation, it's down to 2 by the end. So that's another good way to compact the experience, make it shorter, make it faster, make it easier. If you want to learn more about this method of doing the work, there's a couple of resources that we've found valuable. Jeff Sorrow, the author of the first article that I linked, along with Christian Rohr, the author of the second article, were the 2 people that kind of invented this method. And so they're great sources to check out if you want to learn a little bit more. Christian was one of the people that we actually, as I mentioned in the beginning, we saw 2 conferences where the universe was telling us we needed to use the pure method. We got to go to a workshop that he led, so that was super exciting. And his article on the NNG site about it is really informative and helped us get started using this method for sure. The third article that's linked on there is by another UX researcher who talks about how she uses it in her practice. So you can check out all of these if you want to learn more. And then we'll go through a couple examples of how we are using it here at Widen. So the first use case that I wanted to talk about was around our workflow application. So if you remember back in the beginning, when I was talking about our product suite, workflow is the one that's at the very beginning of the process, when you are planning and creating, reviewing, approving the collateral that's going to live in your dam. So we had decided that for 2019, that part of the app was going to go into maintenance mode. We weren't going to be doing a lot of new development on it. And so we wanted to kind of put it to bed in the best shape that we could. And so we picked 3 of the top tasks: requesting asset updates, approving requests for projects, reviewing and approving material, and did a peer evaluation of them at the beginning of Q4 so that we could prioritize our work during Q4, knowing that it was going to take a little rest in Q1 of last year. And you can see when we redid this evaluation in January, we were able to make some improvements. The team really prioritized this approve request for project because it had a moment in there where we thought people are likely to abandon. This is just too hard. And so they were able to prioritize their Q4 work on that part of the task flow and get it in better shape so that even though, you know, it'd be nice to see some green on here, they're all yellow, they're not red. And so we felt okay about knowing what was wrong and then knowing that we did something about it and putting it into a decent state for maintenance time. Another example, remember this is when the setup of the 5 apps that are all part of the collective becomes more important. Our product strategy shifted over the last couple of years, where initially when some of those apps like templates, workflow portals were being developed, we had this long-term vision that perhaps one day they will be sold individually. They might be their own thing. That shifted. The market reasons, our customers were telling us, like, we really want to have a unified thing when we come in and purchase from Widen. We don't want to just daisy chain bits and pieces together. We want to have a collective. We want to have a suite. So when our product strategy changed, we found ourselves with 5 different things that had not necessarily started with that same vision. And so we've been doing a little bit of rejudging of the experience over the last couple of years to meet that new product strategy. We also, when we were thinking, this was get in your time machines to like Thanksgiving last year when we were starting to do our prioritization for what we were going to do in product development in 2020. Global navigation across the entire suite was not prioritized as something that we were going to work on this year. I'll show you in the next slide a little bit more about what that means. But basically we decided this year we are not doing anything to the top level main navigation throughout the app. The UX team was maybe a little sad about that prioritization decision, but once we started talking about the projects that we were going to be working on and the things that we had opportunities to influence and change, we realized that there were a lot of places where we could start building contextual navigation into the apps, regardless of what was going on in the top line. We knew we had a project to look at our single object view. What kinds of links might we put in there to get from one object to another? We knew that we were going to be creating some new list views. So you've got a whole bunch of stuff. How do you get from one to another? We saw opportunities to make navigation improvement, even though the full product dev teams had decided not to go in on this big rehaul of the top level nav. And so again, for context, this is a screenshot of the landing page for a demo site that we use. So this is a pretty good representation of what a customer's first look at their Widen Collective when they log in might be. So up at the top, you see a little drop down that's labeled assets. That drop down is the app picker. That is how you get from assets to workflow, to portals, to templates. It's kind of the only way that you can get from place to place right now. And then depending on which thing you have selected in that app picker at the very top, the secondary nav underneath it is going to change and give you choices on what to do within that application that you have selected. So again, we're selling a collective suite and we're not touching that. Cool. So what we thought about for how can we baseline the experience of this cross-collective navigation that we wanted to try and improve throughout 2020, we picked 3 key tasks. We name our personas depending on how silly we're feeling on a given day. It might be named after like our favorite dog on Instagram, or it might be like an Irish theme. Who knows? So one of the tasks that we picked was Declan, noticing that an asset that he's looking at has the wrong metadata, but he's not going to fix it. He's the boss. He's going to tell Pam, go fix that. It has the wrong location in it. Can you please deal with this? So maybe he emails a link to Pam, and then Pam has to go figure it out. She has to see where it's showing up wrong. She has to figure out how to get to the place where she can correct it. And then she wants to make sure that her correction is actually showing up. So there's a couple different hops that she needs to make. Another task we looked at was a persona named Adele. She's uploading assets into her site, but she forgets what should go in the description field. She wasn't the one that took these photographs at the event, but she knows there's some that are similar. There was other people that were taking photographs at the event, and those are already in the DAM. So she wants to go and look at those, read the descriptions, and then use that information for the things that she is uploading. So again, a couple pogo stick moments getting around the collective. The third task we looked at was Carrie, who wants to make sure that the marketing materials for a new product launch are all in the right spot. The things that need to be in the portal for this campaign are there. So that means that Carrie's going to want to double check all of the things in the DAM that have been tagged with the campaign, the things that are in the assets application, the things that are within a relevant date range. There's the big bucket of all the stuff, and then there's that little curated bucket of the specific stuff. And so checking between those before the product launch is what this task is all about. So this was our baseline. This was the scorecard that we created. You can see a lot of 1s and 2s up here. There was really only 1 3 that we ended up giving in this evaluation. But all these onesie twosies add up. That's the pogo stick feeling that we were talking about moving through the apps. You have to re-enter URLs, you have to copy and paste stuff. Maybe you open up 2 tabs in order to do 1 task in the same application. Not great. So all of these things are opportunities for us to make improvements throughout the rest of the year. Our intention, you can see the date at the top, we literally just finished the baseline a couple weeks ago. And so the intention is that probably once a quarter, maybe like 3 times throughout the year, depending on what's going on, we're gonna redo this exact same thing and see how the changes that we're making are improving or not improving anything. Secret, even though I know this is being recorded, if at the end of the year this is exactly the same, then I've got a pretty good case to push for prioritizing this stuff next year. We tried making contextual navigation work throughout 2020 and it didn't. I'm being glass half empty, but like really I'm glass half full. I think we'll make it better. But if we don't, then I've got something. I've got a rich data set to point to that says this is why we need to prioritize global navigation. We tried doing it another way and we didn't really move the needle. So the last thing I wanted to share was just the recommendations and kind of what the UX research team shares back with our product and engineering colleagues after we've done a peer assessment. So this is just a couple tidbits out of the whole little summary report that they would write up. We talk about the things that are high priority. What are the things that got a red on the scorecard that we were looking at, or things that are just like kind of stupid? Like why does it have to take 7 steps to do this, that, or the other? We could make this easier and it would be easy for us to do. We also talk about sort of, even though back in the very beginning of this talk, I said that this is all about usability, it's maybe less about visual designer interactions. Again, if those things pop up, if we're all the team sitting in a room together and we're like, the palette field is dumb. Like, why do you have to select this here and then move that there? And you can't drag and drop anything. We'll bring those up. We don't let them just fall through the cracks. And so then it's kind of up to all of the teams that we work in Agile development. The sprint teams make their own priorities and the product managers decide what's going to get worked on. And so this is another opportunity for us as the UX team to kind of slip in our ideas and suggestions and just build the case for them to act upon them. That is what I had to share with you all today. I've completely lost track of time and where we're trying to be, so I think we have time for a couple of questions, but I'll be around all day.
Do y'all have an internal tool or like a place where things are, all of these scores are stored, so you can sort of like look back or parse through or kind of track over time how things are looking on the whole?
Yeah, the short answer is no. The longer answer would be the summaries all live in we use Google Drive throughout the organization. So there's a UX research folder that everybody in the company has access to. And so all of the peer evaluations live in there. We do presentations to the teams that are going to be acting on the results. And so they might take the presentation and attach it to a ticket in Jira, the tool that we use to track the work that the sprint teams are going through. And then sometimes if the team that's going to be taking action on it uses a wiki like Confluence, they'll link it in there so that they have something when they're in their planning meetings to look back at and be like, oh, remember we said this was a really big deal. Let's move it up. We try to keep it as handy as possible for them. Yeah.
You mentioned those personas. I was wondering how those personas are informed and how often you do.
Yeah, we do. The UX research team does field studies 2 or 3 times a year. And so every time we do a field study, we kind of take a look back at the personas and think what needs to be tweaked, edited, modified. Oh wow, this is a brand new person that we didn't even know was out there. And so at least twice a year after the field studies, we do those updates. And then we do smaller, more targeted studies all the time that are more about like, what should we be working on, or even in usability testing. Every time we get customer feedback, we look back at the personas and think, what does this mean for them?
I have a question about like when you do the peer evaluation method, do you invite different kind of cross-functional partners in meeting? And if so, like what kind of strategy do you have to like invite people who might not be that like who are not that UX related, like engineers or other kind of roles in the room, and then how likely this kind of different roles can give different bias to their understanding on the scores?
Yeah, so like I said, we work in Agile framework, so we have cross-functional sprint teams that work on each of the products. And so the cross-functional team is a UX designer, a product manager, a front-end developer, 2 full-stack developers, and a QA person. And so all of those 6 people are pretty familiar with the concept of usability and how it applies to their app, or they're used to thinking about accessibility and responsiveness. Like, we're pretty good at infiltrating the minds of the engineers around here. And so it's not that far outside of their comfort zone to go through this kind of evaluation, because they're listening to, like Adam, one of the people right here in the room today is one of the designers. They're listening to him talk about how important UX is every day in all of their meetings. So it's not that big of a departure for them. But the other thing that we do, to your point of kind of how to balance out the expertise, is we stack the deck with UX people. And so if there's 10 people that are doing the evaluation, 6 of them are from the sprint team, and then there's 1 more designer and 2 more researchers that we'll bring in to gut check.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much time does it take to do an assessment?
We usually plan about an hour and a half for 3 tasks. Yeah, and that, what was that?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it gives time for a little intro in the beginning. It gives time for discussion along the way. Yeah, it's been adequate, I think.
I was just wondering, excuse me, how you set those target thresholds for the overall workflow scores, so that like a large, easy task somehow doesn't get overwhelmed by a small, complicated task.
Yeah, I'm not sure I 100% understand the question, so if I'm not answering it,
Sure.
let me know. Ultimately the numbers, like the top score numbers, are only relevant in this context, right? Like, there's no such thing as, when you do a peer evaluation, you're trying to achieve a 20. Like, no, you're not. Like, what are the tasks that you're trying to work on? What is your baseline? And then how do you improve the baseline? Was that in the neighborhood of what you were looking for?
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking is, if we take a look at this one, for example, it has a 39 and it's red.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that 39 is red, whereas a workflow that has better greens that all add up to 39 isn't red or is green?
Yeah, so the number that is given to the task and like the severity level is based on the worst within, right? And so if this is the only one that has a 3, so this is the only one that's a red. Or if we look back to the non-widen example, the only ones that are green only have green in there. So the score for the task inherits the worst step.
And then the workflow inherits the worst
Yes.
task. Okay.
Yes.
I also have a question on this slide. So it seems like the bar chart indicates the steps they take for each task, right?
Yes.
And I wonder, like, how do you decide the granularity for your analysis? Would that be like too fine that you focus on like this little step that maybe it's not the step that should be taken for this task at all?
Yeah, that can be hard. And so that's one of the things that the UX researcher that is designing the study has to kind of figure out. The rule of thumb that we use is every time the interface changes, it is a new step. So sometimes you might technically do like 3 things on a screen before the interface changes. And so that step might be bigger and harder in the grand scheme of things. This is a subjective rating. Like, this is not this is qualitative information. We attach numbers to it, so it feels a little quanty, but this is based on gut. And so we just accept the risk that maybe the steps that we assigned to this task are one of 6 ways that you might have accomplished it. Cool. Thank you.